In a quiet office of a mid-sized city, Daniel believed his life was set. Day after day, he walked the same halls, greeted the same faces, sat at the same desk. Routine was his safety net. Stability was his nest. He thought nothing would ever change. But life has a way of shaking even the strongest walls. And sometimes, the place we think will protect us forever is only preparing us to leave. One ordinary morning, the silence of Daniel's life was broken. A sudden meeting, a few cold words, cuts, restructuring, layoffs. In just minutes, the place he once called secure was gone. He walked out carrying a box, but inside, he carried something heavier, the fear of starting over. Daniel had always believed comfort meant safety, but life was about to show him that what feels like an ending can sometimes inspire the most unexpected success. And when you look back, you realize the moment you dreaded most was never the end, it was the beginning. If you've ever faced a moment like this, don't walk this journey alone. Hit subscribe right now and join a community where every story reminds you that even in loss, a greater chapter is waiting to be written. The city woke slowly each morning, but Daniel's routine never changed. He parked his old sedan in the same corner of the lot, walked across the buzzing street, and pushed open the glass doors of his office. The hum of printers, the clatter of keyboards, the smell of burnt coffee. It was all so familiar. In that comfort zone, Daniel felt he had built a safe little world, as if destiny had chosen him for stability. At his desk, he often thought, "This is it. Maybe life isn't about chasing dreams. Maybe it's just about holding on." He convinced himself that staying put was strength, that avoiding risks was wisdom. But sometimes, when the office grew quiet, he caught himself staring at the city skyline through the window, wondering if new beginnings were ever meant for him. He quickly shook off the thought, afraid of where it might lead. "Morning, Daniel," his colleague Sarah would say, passing by with her usual cheerful tone. "Morning," he replied with a smile, hiding the weight of his thoughts. To them, Daniel was reliable, the man who never broke routine. They didn't know that inside he often whispered, "Don't fear change, don't fear change," as if repeating the words could keep the storms of life away. But storms don't wait for permission. Lunch breaks were the same too. Daniel sitting with the same group, laughing at the same jokes. He rarely spoke about his deeper feelings. "I'm fine," he would answer whenever someone asked about his life outside work. But inside he wrestled with questions. Was this all there was? Was he meant for more than endless emails and spreadsheets? That silent inner dialogue became his hidden motivational story. Looking back, he would later realize the irony. He thought his strength was instability, when in truth, real hope, courage, and strength only rise when challenges shake us. Life was quietly preparing him for a greater destiny, one he never would have chosen on his own. And the comfort he clung to was only a fragile shell, ready to crack. His story was about to shift into an inspirational story, a moral story carved from loss and renewal. The morning began like any other. Daniel greeted the receptionist, poured himself a cup of bitter office coffee, and sat down at his desk. He opened his inbox, expecting the usual flood of emails. Instead, a message in bold letters caught his eye. Mandatory meeting at 10 a.m. in the conference room. His stomach tightened. Meetings like that were rare, and the sudden urgency made the air feel heavy. At 10 sharp, employees shuffled into the room. The blinds were half closed, casting narrow slits of light across the long table. Daniel glanced at Sarah, who whispered, "What do you think this is about?" He forced a smile, pretending not to worry, but his palms were damp. When the manager cleared his throat, the room fell silent. Words followed that Daniel would never forget. "Due to restructuring, we must let some of you go." Daniel felt his heart drop. He heard muffled gasps, saw wide eyes, but the world around him blurred. He thought, "It can't be me. I've given years here. I'm safe." But when his name was called, it was like the floor gave way. He sat frozen, unable to move, as his colleagues looked at him with quiet sympathy. The comfort zone he thought was unshakable had collapsed in a single sentence. He walked out carrying a small box filled with his belongings, a photo frame, a few books, his favorite mug. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Every step to the parking lot echoed like a drumbeat of finality. In his mind, the same question repeated endlessly. What now? What am I supposed to do? He sat in his car staring at the steering wheel, feeling both anger and emptiness. His thoughts clashed. Fear of the unknown, regret for what he hadn't done, disbelief that it was really over. He whispered to himself, "Don't fear starting over, don't fear change," but the words felt hollow. For the first time in years, Daniel had no map, no plan, only the silence of uncertainty. But life doesn't leave us in silence forever. When the ground breaks beneath us, the desert journey begins. Long nights, unanswered questions, and the struggle to find hope again. And that's exactly where Daniel's story was headed. The first morning after losing his job felt strange. Daniel woke at the same hour, out of habit, but there was nowhere to go. The suit he had ironed the night before still hung on the chair, untouched. He sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, staring at the wall clock as if it mocked him. Time moved, but his life seemed to stand still. His comfort zone was gone, leaving only silence. By the third day, reality sunk in. Bills still needed to be paid, and his savings looked thinner than he wanted to admit. He tried to distract himself with small tasks, washing dishes, mowing the lawn, but the thoughts always returned. 7 years, and I'm nothing now. What did all that effort mean? That once reliable man of the office was now a man questioning his worth. Conversations with friends grew harder. "You'll find something else," Sarah said gently over the phone. "Maybe this is a chance for new beginnings." He forced a laugh, but when he hung up, his smile disappeared. In his mind, her words echoed like a cruel reminder. Change wasn't something he had chosen. It was something forced on him. Don't fear change? Easy to say. Impossible to live in at that moment. At night, sleep became a stranger. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision he had made. Maybe if he had worked harder, maybe if he had spoken up in meetings, maybe if he had prepared for challenges. His thoughts raced, filling him with regret. It wasn't just a lost job, it felt like a lost destiny. And destiny, once lost, is heavy to carry. But deep inside, a whisper stirred, a faint voice reminding him that even moral stories and inspirational stories are written in pain before they shine with hope. He didn't know it yet, but these dark nights were not the end. They were the soil where hope, courage, and strength were quietly taking root. And when the nights grow darkest, that's when the real desert begins. Days of searching, knocking on doors, and hearing nothing but silence. Daniel was about to step into that long, empty road. If you've ever felt this kind of weight, the crushing silence after everything falls apart, then you know how powerful stories like Daniel's can be. Hit the like button right now, not just to support the channel, but as your declaration that even in loss, you're choosing to believe in a greater tomorrow.
Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's life felt like a desert with no horizon. Each morning he refreshed his email, waiting for replies to the dozens of applications he had sent. Nothing. Not even a polite rejection. The silence was louder than words. It whispered doubts into his mind. You're not good enough. You've been forgotten. His once predictable world had become a wilderness of uncertainty. He walked through the city streets searching for opportunities, carrying resumes in a worn folder. At every office he was met with polite smiles and empty promises. "We'll call you back." But the calls never came. Standing on crowded sidewalks, watching people rush to their jobs, he felt like a ghost, present but unseen. The comfort zone he once clung to now seemed like a luxury he had lost forever. At night, Daniel's inner voice turned against him. Maybe Sarah was wrong. Maybe new beginnings are just stories we tell ourselves to soften the pain. He looked at his hands, once steady on a keyboard, now idle and restless. The challenges of unemployment didn't just test his wallet, they tested his soul. It was not just about finding work, it was about finding himself again. One evening, as he returned home, his neighbor stopped him. "Still no luck, Daniel?" she asked kindly. He nodded with a weak smile, not wanting to admit how close he felt to breaking. Behind closed doors, he collapsed on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan spinning endlessly. He thought, "Is this it? Is this my destiny? A man who gave everything and ended with nothing?" The weight grew heavier with each unanswered day. Yet, deep in the silence, something fragile stirred. A quiet thought, almost too small to notice. Perhaps this desert was not meant to destroy him, but to prepare him. Life lessons are often written in the darkest ink, and while Daniel didn't see it yet, his inspirational story was only beginning to take shape. If you've ever wandered through silence yourself, let this be your reminder to press like now, as a way of saying you refuse to give up even when no answer comes. The longer the silence stretched, the heavier Daniel's doubts became. One morning he sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills, electricity, rent, insurance, all stacked like reminders of his failure. He rubbed his temples, whispering, "Maybe I should just take anything to stop this bleeding." The fear of starting over turned into exhaustion. Hope, courage, and strength felt like distant strangers. That afternoon, he met an old colleague for coffee. "You know, Daniel," his friend said, "a warehouse is hiring down the road. It's tough work, long hours, but it's a paycheck." Daniel stirred his cup slowly, staring at the swirl of coffee as if it held the answer. Maybe he's right. Maybe destiny doesn't have bigger plans for me. Maybe survival is all that's left. Later that night, he opened the job listing and hovered over the Apply button. His mind was a storm. Part of him craved the relief of certainty. Another part whispered, giving up on his dreams would be the real defeat. "Don't fear change," he reminded himself, though the words rang hollow. He wondered if new beginnings were meant for others, not for men like him who had already wasted too much time. Exhausted, Daniel slumped into his chair and whispered to the empty room, "Why am I even fighting? No one's waiting for me to succeed. No one cares if I fail." His voice cracked, and for the first time, tears welled in his eyes. He felt like he was carrying a boulder no one else could see. The temptation to give up was not just about money, it was about surrendering his identity, abandoning the man he once believed he could become. But just when he thought he would break, a flicker of defiance rose inside him, a stubborn ember that refused to die out. Perhaps challenges were not curses, but invitations. Perhaps destiny had not abandoned him, but was testing him. Daniel wiped his tears and closed the job listing without applying. Somewhere inside, he knew this wasn't the end. And if you've ever been close to giving up, hit the like button now. Not for me, not even for Daniel, but as your silent declaration that you too refuse to surrender. It was a gray Tuesday morning when Daniel's phone finally rang. The unfamiliar number made his heart race. He hesitated for a moment, then answered. On the other end, a woman's voice said, "We received your application. It's not a permanent role, but we'd like to meet you." Her words pierced the silence that had haunted him for weeks. It wasn't the call he had dreamed of, but it was something. Later that afternoon, he walked into a small startup office tucked between an auto shop and a bakery. The building looked unimpressive, with peeling paint and mismatched chairs in the lobby. Daniel thought, "This can't be where success begins. It's too small, too messy." Yet, behind his doubt, a flicker of curiosity stirred. Perhaps new beginnings don't always come wrapped in shining packages. The interview was nothing like the polished corporate meetings he had used to. "We need people who can wear many hats," the manager explained. "It's chaotic, but there's room to grow." Daniel nodded, uncertain if he was ready for such challenges. He had spent years in rigid routines, and the thought of stepping into unpredictable waters terrified him. Still, something inside whispered, "Don't fear change." That evening, walking back to his car, Daniel carried a paper folder with the company's details. The streets were quiet, the scent of fresh bread from the bakery filling the air. He looked at the folder and sighed. "It's not what I wanted, but maybe it's what I need." The thought lingered as he sat in the driver's seat, staring at the dashboard, wrestling between fear and possibility. By the time he reached home, the decision had settled in his chest. He would take the offer, not because it was perfect, but because refusing it would mean choosing despair over hope. For the first time in weeks, he felt a fragile spark inside him. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was movement. And movement, however small, can change the direction of destiny. The first days at the startup were a whirlwind. Desks cluttered with papers, wires running across the floor, people speaking over each other in excited tones. It was nothing like the polished office Daniel had known for years. At first he felt out of place, like a stranger in a foreign land. But slowly he noticed something different here. Everyone was building, learning, failing, and trying again. It was messy, but alive. His first task was far outside his old comfort zone. "Daniel, can you draft a proposal by tomorrow?" the manager asked. He almost said no. The words caught in his throat. Back at his corporate job, he had only followed strict procedures, never leading. But that night he stayed late, scribbling ideas on a notepad. When he delivered the proposal, the team clapped him on the back. "Great work," someone said. His chest warmed. For the first time in years, he felt useful in a new way. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel began to see himself differently. He wasn't just an employee taking boxes. He was a creator, a problem solver, a leader in the making. "I didn't know I could do this," he whispered to himself after successfully leading a small project. Each challenge stretched him, revealing hidden layers of hope, courage, and strength he never believed he had. Change, once his greatest fear, was slowly becoming his greatest teacher. One afternoon, Sarah called in to check in. "How's the new place?" she asked. Daniel paused, looking around the lively office. People were laughing, brainstorming, running between desks. He smiled. It's different. Chaotic, but I think I'm finally learning who I am." She cluckled softly. "Sounds like you found your wings." For the first time, Daniel didn't laugh off the idea. He believed it. By embracing the uncomfortable, Daniel had discovered something priceless. Growth only happens when we leave the nest. The man who once dreaded new beginnings was now learning that challenges carry hidden treasures. His old life had ended, but his destiny was unfolding in ways he never imagined. And though he still stumbled, each step revealed a stronger, freer version of himself, like wings he had been carrying all along, waiting to be used.
Months passed, and the little startup that once looked fragile began to grow. New clients arrived, projects multiplied, and the office that once felt chaotic started to pulse with direction and vision. Daniel often stood by the window during late evenings, watching the city lights flicker. He thought about how far he had come since the day he carried that box out of his old job. What had once felt like an ending was slowly revealing itself as a hidden beginning. The company trusted him with more responsibility. "Daniel, can you lead this project?" the manager asked one morning. A year ago, he would have frozen in fear. Now, he nodded with quiet confidence. He guided the team through challenges, solved problems creatively, and discovered that leadership wasn't about authority. It was about courage, patience, and vision. For the first time, destiny didn't feel like something out of reach. It was happening in real time. Daniel's office space changed too. What started as a single desk, squeezed between others, became a corner with his name on the door. He decorated it with reminders of his journey, the same old mug, a small plant, and a photo of his family. These simple items reminded him of the life lesson he had learned. Comfort zones can vanish, but new beginnings often grow stronger roots than the ones before. Colleagues who once barely noticed him now came for advice. "How did you stay calm when everything was falling apart?" a younger teammate asked. Daniel smiled, remembering the long nights of silence, the tears he once hid. Because sometimes challenges are not there to destroy us, they're there to show us what we're made of. His words carried weight, not from theory, but from scars turned into strength. Looking back, Daniel realized that the job he thought was a step down had become a step up into a better future. His story was no longer just about survival. It was about transformation. What began as fear had blossomed into hope, courage, and strength. He had stumbled into a hidden garden of growth, one he never would have found if life hadn't pushed him out of the old nest. And still, his greatest revelation was yet to come. One crisp morning, Daniel arrived early to the office. The sun was rising over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold. He unlocked the door, walked through the quiet halls, and stopped for a moment at his corner office. The once chaotic startup had become a thriving company, buzzing with ideas and opportunity. Daniel stood there in silence, a wave of gratitude washing over him. He whispered to himself, "If I hadn't lost everything, I would have never found this." The memory of that day, the box in his hands, the emptiness in his chest, flashed before him. Back then, he thought it was the end of his destiny. But now, standing in this place, he understood. The layoff hadn't been a punishment. It had been a redirection. A life lesson he could only see with distance. Endings can be disguised as beginnings. Don't fear change, because sometimes change is the very hand that saves you. During a team meeting, his manager said, "Daniel, your leadership has transformed this department. We couldn't have done this without you." Applause filled the room, but Daniel stayed humble, smiling quietly. For him, the true victory wasn't the recognition. It was knowing he had survived the silence, the doubts, the temptation to give up. He had walked through the desert and found strength he never knew existed. That evening, Sarah called again. "I told you this could be your new beginning," she teased warmly. Daniel laughed, this time with genuine joy. "I was right," he admitted. "I just couldn't see it back then. I thought my comfort zone was safety, but it was actually a cage. Losing it forced me to fly." His voice trembled with sincerity, and for the first time, he spoke not as a man broken by loss, but as a man restored by destiny. As Daniel drove home under the fading light, he reflected on the moral of his story. Hope, courage, and strength are not gifts we are handed. They are forged in the fire of challenges. What felt like a cruel ending was the doorway to his hidden garden. What he once feared most had become the source of his greatest success. And in that revelation, Daniel knew life had never abandoned him. It had simply pushed him toward who he was meant to become. In every life, there are moments when the ground gives way beneath us. We lose jobs, homes, relationships, the very things we thought would last forever. In those moments, fear whispers that it's the end. But Daniel's story reminds us that what looks like a collapse may actually be the foundation of something new. Don't fear starting over, because starting over often reveals the strength we never knew we had. When we cling too tightly to comfort, we risk missing the destiny waiting beyond it. Daniel believed his routine was safety, but it was only holding him back. His loss became the doorway to transformation, proof that challenges can be invitations in disguise. This is more than a motivational story. It is a moral story, one that speaks to us all. Endings are rarely endings. They are beginnings written in different ink. Hope, courage, and strength do not appear when life is easy. They are born when life is hardest. Daniel's silence, his tears, his doubts, those became the soil where growth took root. We too must face our deserts, and like Daniel, we will one day look back and realize that the place we feared was our undoing was actually our turning point. That is the life lesson hidden in pain. If you're standing in the ruins of what you thought was your future, remember this. New beginnings rarely come in the form we expect. They arrive quietly, sometimes through loss, sometimes through rejection, sometimes through endings that leave us broken. But the story doesn't end there. What feels like loss today may reveal itself tomorrow as the greatest blessing of your life. So let Daniel's journey be your reminder. Don't fear change. Don't fear the collapse of your comfort zone. Your destiny is not behind you. It is ahead, waiting for the courage of your next step. This is not just Daniel's story. It is yours too. And the chapter you are about to write may just be the most beautiful one yet. So if this story spoke to your heart, take a moment to join this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel and share your voice in the comments by writing, "I choose new beginnings." Let it be your declaration of courage. And when this video ends, don't stop here. Step into the next story waiting on your screen, because every lesson builds on the last, and your path forward is only just beginning.